connect. خلاص, there you go. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Okay, محمد, knock us out. We're recording.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is a very special session. I was just saying that this is a very unique opportunity to learn about the traditional city, not from the perspective of looking at it from a distance, but looking at it much more closely, because Soraya will talk to us today about her framework and for understanding the traditional city, as well as basically her initiative of the New Medina. So let me tell you, today is basically about the traditional Islamic city, or traditional urbanism in the Islamic city. And the Islamic city was basically an exemplar of human scale, walkability, and community. And this system integrated commerce, craftsmanship, politics, spirituality in a very seamless way. This meant that the traditional city did not suffer from the problems that we have today in our cities of violence, loneliness, gentrification, and what have you. So today we have Soraya Hosni, who's going to talk to us about the New Medina, her initiative on how basically to reintegrate some of these principles. So Soraya is basically the chairwoman of INTBAU Tunisia, which is the Association for Traditional Architecture around the world. She's the basically chairwoman of the Tunisian chapter. And she's also the founder of the New Medina. Aside from that, she's also an entrepreneur. By training, she's an anthropologist. So she brings basically different worlds together, and basically she introduces them in the New Medina. The New Medina initiative itself is focused on bringing together the traditions of the past, making them alive, making basically the city alive by looking at restoring the tradition of the city, not through restoring its buildings alone, but also through making sure that you integrate the community, that you make sure that craftsmanship, that community, that spirituality become part of that sort of revitalization process. I cannot wait to hear more from Soraya on this topic. I welcome her and welcome everybody to our presentation today, to our talk today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Soraya. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Ammar, for the invitation. And I'm really delighted to be having this conversation today. And I hope we'll have rich Q&A after the presentation. The Medina of Sousse is kind of my flagship Islamic city. Whenever I want to speak about what Islamic urbanism and how do we live in a city that was designed with the sacred at heart looks like, then of course I bring the Medina of Sousse. I will be presenting today in two parts. First, it will be more theoretical in what I mean by the 7 principles of Islamic urban design. And then the second part, I will speak specifically to the New Medina, which is our revitalization project here in the Medina of Sousse in Tunisia. And please feel free to post your questions. We'll get to them after the presentation and we can have a conversation together. I hope that this inspires you and that you come to visit us in Sousse, and hopefully we can grow projects across the Islamic world on revitalization. Like Mohammed said, I am an anthropologist, so forgive me for not talking structure and foundation and buildings in that sense. I will talk about people, community, and how that intertwine into the urban design. My perspective as an anthropologist, I think, is very important, because if we look at how people live in a city, we cannot dissociate the people from the urban environment and from the built-in environment. So how do people and communities live in a city? That is my contribution, and I will combine this with design elements that will show
Yo, is everything okay? Or is it me, or is she lagging? Am I lagging? Hope not. Oh, I'm the guest.
No,
I'm the
I think it might be Soraya.
Alhamdulillah. All right, cool. Okay, I'll just pause it for a second.
Soraya. Yeah, Soraya, would you like to pick up from where you left off?
Yes, I apologize for this interruption. Okay, so I will go through a brief history of the Medina of Sousse. Then I will go into what I call the 7 Principles of Islamic Urban Design. Then my second part will be why the New Medina and what do I mean by the future of heritage and how we see it. Then we can have a conversation, all of us together. So, the Medina of Sousse is a coastal city that was listed UNESCO World Heritage City in 79. As you can see from the map of Tunisia, Sousse is a very strategic place in the Mediterranean region. It is located here in the Gulf of Hammamet, and it is the second oldest mosque in Africa. So when the Muslims came to this part of the world, they settled in Qayrawan and they settled in Sousse. The region was very indigenous. There were a few villages, obviously, and it was mostly agricultural land. Now, in order to make a city an Islamic city, we don't just settle anywhere. We as Muslims have principles. And like our teacher, Dr. Omar al-Farouq, taught us that the Islamic city is a living reality. It has to be self-sufficient, just, and resilient. To be a true city, it has to produce everything it needed. And in this place of the world, it had everything it needed. It had farmland, it had water, it had the sea, and it had a place where we could do trade across the Mediterranean region, from which all the market and traders will come and go from. Dependency in an Islamic city is not a sign of progress. Independence is. We have to be independent. We have to be self-sufficient. And this insight reminds us that sustainability is really at the core of what makes an Islamic city. This postcard here, you can see the fortification of the city. It still looks like this on the outside of the city today, and you can see it is on the water and ready for trading and for protection. This is the Medina of Sousse today. Like I said, it was built in the 900 by the Aghlabite civilization, and they used local materials, and it served as a fortress and the second Islamic settlement in the region after Qayrawan. When I speak about the Islamic urban design principles, I speak from a cosmological perspective, and that is where the anthropologists come in the perspective. So when we speak of cosmology, we have to understand this is our worldview. As Muslims, we see the world in a particular manner, and this transcends time, and it transcends realities, and we see the world as we live it within physicality and non-physicality. Also, our relationship to time is particular. We see time as a continuity. Time is not bounded by the present moment. We as Muslims live in multi-dimensional time frames. Now, to go deeper into the core principles, there are 7: Tawheed, Iqama, Umran, Adab, Haya, Mizan, in awqaf. Some of them are more invisible, let's say, and some of them are more physical or jurisprudence, we'll say. Tawheed is at the center of it all, and it is also at the center of the city, right? So Tawheed is at the center of our cosmology, the unity of the divine order rules everything, and it is also how our city is designed. The first monument or the first structure that had significant size was the fortress, because originally the fortress was the only building, and then it extended to the mosque. This mosque has a very unique feature because it has no minaret, and the reason why it has no minaret is because the fortress was built before, and so we didn't need two high structures for the adhan. The adhan could be made by the tower of the fortress, the ribat. So this side of the constructions has no minaret. As you can see, it is a very prominent building, and it's at the heart of the Medina. Now, today, the church and the synagogue are no longer active, but they still exist in the Medina of Sousse, and that is very important as well. In Islamic urban design, we respect other faith and other places of worship, but they are at the core of the design. And if you look at the streets, we can go back here. If you look at the small streets of the Medina, if you walk through the few alleys that there is, you will always find a mosque. And that links us to the Tawheed principle and how the sacred is embedded into the urban design. Today in the city, if you're in the Medina, you can hear the adhan every time. If you are in other parts of the city, on the touristic areas, in the hotels, you may or may not hear it. But in the Medina, you will always hear it, if your ears can hear the adhan and your heart. The two other principles that are very important and comes down to how we live in the city is Qama and Umran. So when we first arrived in the Medina and wanted to do a revitalization project, the first thing we did was a questionnaire to the people of the Medina. And what they ranked the highest and the most important element of living in the Medina wasn't heritage, wasn't hearing the adhan, wasn't walking to the market, wasn't any of these. The highest ranked element that makes living in the Medina so special was the neighbors. And that comes to mutual care and responsibility. Living in the Medina, we care about each other, we know our neighbors, and we are mutually responsible for each other's property, children, everything, rituals, everything. So being responsible and being a steward of a place comes also of responsibility to neighbors and to the relationships of the place. It is not just cleaning in front of your house, it is also caring for your neighbor. And that is still present here in this neighborhood today because the fabric of the city is still like, it's a mutual relationship. Beautification is also very important. Unfortunately, today, we will get to this part, there's a lot of abandonment of buildings, but at the core principle of the Medina, beauty is important. Calligraphy is even on the stone walls, and the doors are beautiful, the spaces are beautiful. Everywhere you enter, whether it's a small or big place, it is beautiful. Autonomy is extremely important, and independence, as I stated in the beginning, is extremely important. We have to be independent in water, food, sustenance, and tools and trade. So today, still in the Medina, and we could see that during the COVID crisis, the neighborhood was completely alive and we missed nothing compared to other places in the world that struggled to sustain themselves, providing basic needs. These are photos of our neighbors, how we care for each other, elders, women, go to the market, animals, bread makers, woodworkers, everybody who has a craft is an active contributor to society and to the community. I mentioned adab, and adab is extremely important in our lives as Muslims, but in the city it transfers as like physical element that manifests this adab. And the first element I would like to mention is the door. And a lot of people know Tunisian doors, and you see, I'm just going to put this here, you see the doors as an element of Tunisian tradition. But if you look closely here, you have 3 knocks of the door. And that is how adab is translated in how we knock at the door. There is a knock for men, there is a knock for women, and there is a knock for children. And that is because if a man comes to a home that is not his, then the woman knows that it's a man at the door, and vice versa. If it's a woman, then the women don't need to go and cover. And so the adab of knocking the door and how the door is designed is still, like I said, intertwined. Everything is intertwined. How we manifest this value and how we physically show it in the architectural elements. In this door, you can see also the nails on the door, and they used to, and this one in particular still does, it tells you how many people live in the household, how many family lives in the household, and sometimes also what trade they have. And in other instances, if they are Muslims or Jewish, it will also say in the door. And we can see that more prominent in the island of Jerba, where our architecture with the Jewish family is very intertwined as well. So the way the design of the door is will tell you a lot about the family. The knock is the material manifestation of adab. Multiple generation, and that is extremely important here. We see elders, we see children, everyone can be a pedestrian. You are safe walking in the Medina. You are in the shade walking in the Medina. Whereas in other places of the city, if it's midday, you will not have shade, but in the Medina you have parts that are covered, so you can always go shopping. And there's other places where you would walk when there is shade only on one half or on the other half of the street, but there's always one half that is shaded. Adab is also manifested in being able to walk in the city. If you are an elder and you cannot leave your home and you cannot have mobility, that is not how we respect our elders. That is not how they can have a social life. Today there was an elder in front of my home, and my nephew went and helped her. If she was going to the supermarket, then there would be no human interaction. In the Medina, there will always be a human interaction, and that manifests with the adab. Adab is also with animals, and I will get back to this with the waqf. But taking care of the animals and why we have cats that are free in the Medina is also part of the Islamic design. So haya and modesty is extremely important as well. I'm just going to put this here. I don't know if this is the best place. There. So the features of the windows are also how we manifest modesty and how we communicate privacy and community connectivity. I can still have sunlight into my room, but people will not see me. And that ability to have modesty, but at the same time having sunlight and being exposed if I want to peek at the window and talk to somebody, that can be done because of the design of the windows. Obviously, there's more to it because there's also climate control with the windows, and you can see on the sides, the windows or above the doors, the circulation of the air makes the air circulate and the building's always cool. But the mashrabiyah with the designs that are reflecting modesty, where I can be in privacy in my home, but at the same time having connection with the outside, is extremely important in the architecture. And it transcribes the respect of boundaries, which goes back to adab as well. Courtyards are connected to nature, and the rooftops is also an extension of that private space. Originally, in how the spaces are used in the Medina, the rooftop is a women-only space because we can communicate to each other during hanging clothes, or this is also where we do drying our crop like couscous or chilies or tomatoes or anything that needs sunlight and drying and collaboration with neighbors will be done on the rooftop. So the life of the rooftop is extremely important, and we can communicate through the wall of the rooftop with privacy between women of different households. Today, if you look at the Medina of Marrakesh, for example, all the rooftops have pools and have been privatized, so all that life, communal life of the rooftop has been eliminated. In the Medina of Sousse, they're mostly abandoned today, but we still have that as the main private space for women and neighbors to communicate between each other. Harmony, and that is something that is very important. Balance, equilibrium, harmony between the natural, the social, the built-in environment. Everything has a place. It is integrated and it is natural in the sense that we are always in connection with the divine through creation. Birds come into the patio, you see the sunlight, you feel the rain, you plant different things in your garden. This is very important for the health of the being. If we see the effect of not having vitamin D on people and not having exposure to sunlight, we know that this is not the healthy way to live. But when architecture integrates elements of health, balance, and harmony, then all these things that are nefast for the person becomes understandable. And now we can see that with a patio that brings water and greenery, the life is completely different in the built-in environment. It's also sound soothing when you hear the fountains at night or when you hear the water circulating through the patio. So there's all these things that connects us to creation through the built-in environment and also through our needs as humans. Okay. This is also social harmony. I wanted to bring these pictures because these two doors tell you the story of nothing. It tells you that the household there looks the same. However, the house on the left is a palace, And the house on the right is a modest household. The modesty from the door and from the architecture of both social class shows you that in a city that everyone respects each other and our outwardly manifestation does not show how much wealth we have is very important. If you look at the modern cities, you can see that you have quarters for rich people and you have neighborhoods where poor people are all together. It is completely divided socially. You do not have social mixity in the city as much as in a city like the Medina, which is purposely designed to give respect to everyone living in this city. If you see these two houses, you wouldn't know which one is the rich, which one is the poor. And that is by design. It is not by accident. It is because it embeds the values of Islamic principle of mizan and harmony. Waqf is our last principle, and that is very important because it is the transmission, the inheritance, the future. The person of the present think about what comes next, generations after us. How is the city going to be sustained? How is the public service going to continue? How does charity transcribes into urban spaces and who will take care of them? So waqf is embedded by ruling into our Islamic urban design. And one element of architecture that transcribes this is that some people would pay charity as a fountain so that the cats will always have water. And that is how we continue to give to each other through time. As I shared in the beginning, we don't have a present and a future. We are a continuous people of time in our cosmology. And waqf is a manifestation of that principle of time and cosmology on how we see our relationship to time. How we envision taking care of the buildings after our passing is embedded if you follow the principle, which today is not done. I'm not portraying a perfect picture of the Medina of Sousse. I will get to what we can do now in the future to restore these things. But waqf was already embedded, and that is across the Muslim world. It's not just here, obviously. But the fact that we think about who will give water to the cats tells you of the depth of the cosmology and how our relationship to time and space and the living is embedded in everything we do. I will pause here for a moment. If there is any questions to address now, I can answer them. Or if you want me to continue about the New Medina, let me know.
Perhaps we can continue with the New Medina and then we can
Okay.
maybe have the full-on discussion.
Okay. So, as I said, I'm an anthropologist and my passion is revitalization of culture. In 2016, when I came back to the Medina of Sousse, I saw a lot of buildings abandoned. I felt that a lot of people felt this neighborhood wasn't for them anymore. It wasn't providing like it used to, that other neighborhoods more modern were more suitable for them and for their families. And I felt something in my heart. I felt like that this did not have to be like this. But I also had the responsibility. I cannot be living in LA and then telling people, no, you should protect it. So my husband and I decided to move our children and our family back to the Medina of Sousse, where my grandmother was born, where my mother was born, and to do something about it. And what we did about it was creating the New Medina. And this started really as a cultural, urban, and social revitalization project of the Medina of Sousse. We really saw this as a living laboratory for cultural revitalization. And rooted in our tradition, in our heritage, activating everything we see as part of our culture and what our new generation of travelers and academics and researchers and artists would need to be the ambassadors of this place. So we started doing incubators for entrepreneurs, developing food projects, education, advocating for the whole restoration of the neighborhood, of the infrastructure, of the electricity, of the public buildings that were abandoned. And today I can say that 10 years later, there's currently 16 buildings from the city being renovated. The whole Medina now has electricity. When we arrived, there wasn't electricity anymore in the neighborhood. It was abandoned, but now it took 5 years, but now the whole Medina and the whole electricity was redone. People starting creating new businesses, and so the ecosystem is growing and thriving, and we can show that by caring, we can embrace what the future of our neighborhood can look like according to our principles, because our rooftops are still private and they're not being siloed from the rest of the community. The businesses are locally owned, and we can really show that transmission doesn't have to be giving up on what we own in our new generation. So for me, what's very important about heritage is that it's not preserved as nostalgia of the past, but it is lived as a foundation for a more sustainable and connected future to perdure in future generations. So this is one of the buildings we purchased. On the left, it looked like this when we purchased it. It looks like the jungle now on the right. With a beautiful gift from our friend El Cid, who wrote Hub on it, and shade for cats. I don't know if you can see the cat, but the cats of the neighborhood are very happy that now they have shade. It was abandoned for like 10 years, and we restored slowly the 5 buildings. What looked like this before looks like this now. This is an art gallery and multi-purpose space. We host here events and shows, concert, hadras, everything really basically in this space, but mostly gallery. We host dinners and conversations. We are a place where young people can come and train traditional music, and we really invite our scholars, our teachers to come and use the space for transmission. We want Sousse to be a place where you can come and restore yourself, learn about our culture through everything that happens from the New Medina. We hosted a lot of different research projects. For those of you who are interested in academic research, we want to have more research about our region, whether it's our history, our artists. There's so much more research to be done, and when you come here, you can be connected to a whole community of academics or artisans if you're researching on textiles or woodwork or any type of artifacts. What else? Yes, we host Michelin star chefs as well. We teach them about our food systems, about olive oil. We created the first olive oil bar in Tunisia to teach about our agricultural systems, food systems, because I believe that heritage, food, and built-in environment are all connected. They cannot be dissociated. So we host these olive oil tasting. Everyone who comes to the New Medina leaves as an expert in olive oil, and then you can like show the world how now you know everything about olive oil. There's a lot more to be done. These are buildings that are abandoned in the neighborhood that we wish to hopefully fundraise and purchase and grow really our ecosystem, because we see the potential. We've done a lot of work already, but there's so much more to be done. And yeah, this is, in a nutshell, my presentation about the Medina of Sousse and a glimpse into the world of the new Medina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Soraya. All right, cool. So that is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much, Soraya. Truly, this is so inspiring for people in, let's say, the West, the East, even me, who's currently in Singapore. I can see where your skills and your inspiration truly can be applied almost everywhere. It's quite literally a worldwide initiative. I'm very, very proud of you, and you should be proud of yourself as well. MashaAllah wa tabarak ar-Rahman. This is very much the step in the correct direction, and it's something more countries should be doing. I'll ask you my first question, and we'll give it to Muhammad, and after Muhammad, inshallah, we'll give it to anyone else that has questions. My first question here is, do you see this as something that future generations can sustainably maintain? For example, do you see your kids following in your footsteps? And my second question is this example with the city of Sousse only limited to Sousse, or do you see it spreading, let's say, all over Tunisia, all over North Africa, all over the Islamic world, and perhaps even worldwide? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. You know, the first question is very important to me, because it was essential as a global diaspora family for my children to feel the love of their homeland, the love of their culture, the love of their family. And this is why we lived here. In the very first place, that was my intention. I wanted to implement in them the love of Sousse. I can tell you that I get a lot in trouble because I had to go to Yale for the past 2 years, to Yale University in the East Coast of the US, and they are so upset. They're like, this place sucks, sorry for the terms, this is not the Medina of Sousse, and why are we not in the Medina of Sousse, and who's taking care of the cats, and what, this bread doesn't taste. Anyway, I hear all the complaints. The fish is not good, the tomatoes are not good, the olive oils are not, anywhere outside of the Medina of Sousse, nothing is good. So I think they will keep that forever, inshallah. You never know, but inshallah. They do care about this place, they love it, and they bring their friends from all over the world, even from Tunisia. Some children here live here all their life and never visit the Medina. They live in Sousse, but they will never visit the Medina because it's like the poor neighborhood now. It's like not so fancy. So my children were the reason why many children of their school came to the Medina. So hopefully we were able to infuse love and care for the future. Allahu Ya'lam. We do our best. When it comes to the playbook, absolutely, that is my main intention, is to, one, grow the Medina, the new Medina project as I see it, because we restored 6 buildings, but I have a vision of how the ecosystem should look like as a grown ecosystem. And for me, this is a playbook, because heritage, sustainability, built-in environment, are things that are the elements are present in many cities. When you are rooted in a cosmology that is strong and atemporel, beyond time, we cannot bind ourselves from the past or the future. We are beyond time. So these cities were never made to live for 10 years or 100 years. They've been here since the 9th century, and they're still here, and they're still providing what we see today as groundbreaking. So I believe that it is a model, and done right at the scale of what I see, then we can 100% replicate, and we should. And actually, even newly designed cities can embrace those principles. There is no reason other than the limitation of the architects and the developers to not do this correctly today.
Yes, thanks very much, Soraya. This is really very encouraging and very, yeah, it's really took a lot of perseverance, I'm sure. Two things that really drew my sort of like attention is basically your focus on the idea not of the past or the future, because we always see this narrative of the future will look like this, and especially like in the Arab world, there's always this talk about the future. So it's really amazing that you're focusing on the hadir, or the present, as we call it in the Arabic language, al-hadir, which sort of strongly implies that idea of presence, mindfulness, and presence.
Yeah.
And since you link it to the sacred, so it's basically the divine presence that is sort of dominating over the city itself, the traditional city, which is closely linked to something that is really implied throughout your presentation, which is beauty, really. Beauty with relationships, but beauty also of the aesthetics of the city itself. The fact that humans care really for everything in their environment, not just other humans, but also for the dogs and the cats. Naturally speaking, that they would dedicate an entire public fountain, a sabil, or something to basically the stray cats and the stray animals and birds, I'm sure. And it also reminded me a lot of like these are grounded principles. And when you use the word principles, I really buy into that because like in my own research, I do see these principles sort of being reflected in the different cities, since we're talking all the way from Andalusia, all the way basically to like through Egypt and through basically the Levant and through to India and beyond that. So this is really great. But one question is, how do you ensure that like people really talk about the facade, right? It looks like an Islamic building, right? Because it has like the calligraphy, it has Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, this thuluth sort of script. But is this really Islamic? How do you ensure that these principles are really protected beyond the facade and beyond the buildings and the look of the buildings?
Because, like I said, it's intertwined. If you don't have the people and the people embodying the principles, the building isn't going to do it for you.
Mm,
And that's the ruh of the building. And that's also what
yeah,
I see as revitalization. If you just restore the facade of a building, or even implement some elements of Islamic design into a building on a facade or on some architectural elements, but it has no ruh, then
yeah,
it cannot be a living cosmology. It cannot. You cannot just take. I drew a circle, so you cannot just take
mm,
one piece of the pie. If you take one piece of the pie, you have that. And it can be very
yeah.
beautiful, and it can be inspiring, and it can serve one purpose. But it cannot serve the purpose that we claim the Islamic urban design should serve.
Yeah, so it's integrated basically at different levels, not just the architecture, obviously, but the fact that people are revitalizing their own relationships, and hence you moving to the town rather than moving it to maybe like a richer area or more in an upscale area.
Yeah, I
This is something
mean,
that,
like I
yeah.
said, social mixity is very important. And as believer of agent of khidma, you have to be at service of other people. In a place where you only have one social class, it is not a sustainable ecosystem for nobody,
Mm,
because everybody needs everybody. I need help, they need help, we need different kind of help, but we all need each other. And rich neighborhoods
yeah.
cannot live without the people commuting for an hour and a half to come and work in their
Mm,
neighborhoods. Why do they have to commute this much? Like, it's not fair. Why don't
mm.
they're not their neighbors? They could just be their neighbors like it used to be.
Yeah, that's true. And that's definitely the way that it used to be. And as you pointed in the presentation, you cannot really distinguish a rich person's house from basically someone who is lower in the economic social class from the facade, because people tended to sort of not want to show off their wealth as not to awaken these sentiments of jealousy and envy. And that's really beautiful and amazing. Dr. Amira, I think, has a question. Dr. Amira, would you like to take the mic?
Yes, thank you very much. I have to say that I'm speaking to you from a public space, so I'm sorry if there's noise. I really, really enjoyed this. It's a bit theology and Quranic morals, but I find it also very much in tune with, what I do. My question to you, I also lived in LA and moved back to Egypt, is about the different elements that you needed to bring together to make this happen. Like your interest and will and your family's commitment and, is wonderful. But you also need to have a buy-in from the municipality, I assume. You need funders so you could do this. And I see that, in the example of Egypt, oftentimes these are the areas where we have, the stumbling blocks. Like, some people or entities have brilliant ideas, but then not everybody's on board. And sometimes the people who are supposed to benefit from this, the people of, in your case, the Medina themselves, I mean, they're so sold on, the Western model of, gated communities, and that's everybody's dream, and which goes very much against, this communal style of living. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit just about what are the different forces and what kind of a path was that? Was it, very difficult? Are you still struggling? Is it something that is, have you been lucky with that? Obviously, it seems like you were. Thank you.
I don't know if we can call it luck or determination or craziness, or maybe a little bit of everything. But first of all, it's a privately funded project. And when we started, we didn't have the funds to start, but we still started with Bismillah. And Allah provided for us, Alhamdulillah, and we started slowly at our scale, and we're able to manifest everything with our intention at a different rhythm. And slowness is actually healthy because it removes a lot of hurdle that you actually don't need and things that you don't need when you're doing things slower. So that's about the new Medina. Then when it came to public infrastructure, I'm an anthropologist. I was born and raised in Paris. I'm able to speak with an ambassador. I'm able to speak with international fund people, and they want to have people they can speak with. They want to have people that actually know how to disperse these funds or can advise the city on how to apply to these fundings. So I served as a strategist for the city, as a unwanted volunteer. Hey, remember me? We should do this at the meeting. And I did this for a very long time. For the electricity, just to give you an example, electricity came in the whole Medina. This year, they completed the whole renovation of the electricity. In my street, it came the first year that I arrived because I was not willing to wait for electricity in my street, and I went to them every other day, insisting. Hi, do you need a light bulb? Do you need help to buy the light bulb? Everyone is trying their best, and a lot of time bureaucracy is not there to do things against us, but it's just like people need motivation, or they don't know how to make it easier, or if you offer some help, if you do advocacy. In Europe, people are used to writing letters and advocating for a street to be changed or something to be done in the public domain. In our countries, we tend to think that it's just gonna come to you, whether you ask it or not. Somebody will guess that you need it. Well, it doesn't really work like this, and we don't have digital system to submit complaints and talking with people with respect, showing up to the city council meetings, even if it's late and boring, and yes. So it did take a lot of that, but I'm very happy that we have amazing people working in the city of Sousse, and because we're a UNESCO World Heritage Site, it helps.
Yes, I'm sure. But yeah, the effort is amazing, honestly, and I salute you.
It helps. And
Thank you, Soraya. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Really insightful question. Yeah, it's a really insightful question because it makes me really think also about Egypt, because you have a lot of we have a lot of these areas in Cairo, Islamic Cairo, that are, I was saying earlier, that are squarely these like part of the Islamic city or part of the old traditional city, but then you don't have any sort of in a sense, we have like these separate efforts right here and there, but you don't have like one concentrated effort to focus on a part of the Medina to revitalize its different dimensions and aspects. We have a question from Joshua. Joshua, how are you? Would you like to take the mic?
Hello, assalamu alaikum. I'll remain off camera. It's still a bit early where I am. But thank you, Ustaza, for the wonderful talk. I'm also trained as an anthropologist at the University of California, San Diego, and so close, just down the street from you. My question is around, and a lot of my research is around the educational component, and I see a lot of the solutions that people are implementing as sort of downstream from the more root or essential and lasting interventions, which really I see as kind of being around the youth. And so I know you, like you mentioned with your children, that they have this affection for the Medina, and that this is a beautiful thing. But I wonder, and maybe you mentioned this in the presentation, I didn't hear, but are you involved with, or are you aware of any sorts of projects or interventions where young people are being educated about traditional architecture and the importance of this way of life in any capacity?
Thank you for your question. I can tell you that in Tunisia there's a wave of young people that do care a lot about heritage. That's this post-revolution generation in Tunisia really care a lot about the language, the fashion, the rituals, the architecture, and you see that manifesting in numbers when it's Ramadan, for example. We have all the young people who want to experience Ramadan within the old city and to really be part of this architecture and not elsewhere. You can also see during inheritance. The reason why a lot of houses are not being sold is because there's disagreement within the families. And while that delays restoration or whatever, it's because someone in the family still cares and someone in the family doesn't want to sell it to a random person. And I think that's very important. And you can see, for example, my neighbor, he's in his 30s and he inherited a piece of land next to me, and he's building his house slowly in the Medina, but he could have built his house elsewhere. He chose the Medina. So when it comes to loving these areas, I feel like there's definitely a renouveau, I would say in French, about loving the Medina again and really caring. You see a lot of new businesses. So I'm hopeful for the future because I do see that the new generation cares. And also, people who live here, they only like to live here. Like they have no intention of living elsewhere. The ones who don't want to live here are, like I said, upper middle class people. But the people who currently live in the Medina, they get married and they still live in the Medina. They're not moving out because it's the best neighborhood.
100%. I think
In
that makes a
all
lot of sense.
objectivity.
That makes a lot of sense. Coming from my point of view as a Gen Z, I feel like the best case scenario for me in Bahrain is to live in Maharraq if I can get there one day, inshallah. Currently, I'm outside of Maharraq, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. We have a sister, I'm assuming sister, yani, Baqiya. Please, Baqiya, take the wheel. After Baqiya, I will read out some questions from my brother Daniel, inshallah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I love this, and I am currently studying architecture in Lahore, Pakistan. And I was actually wondering if I could study traditional urbanism or how the urban development was planned or done in the traditional cities. and unfortunately, I couldn't find much on even my own city, Lahore, which is a very historical city. But if this reminded me of that, and if you have any materials that you can, tell that we can study some books or some things that we can study to work on such projects that lead us to Islamic urbanism or what the sacred city is about.
The only familiarity that I have with Pakistan is the amazing Yasmin Lari, Miss Yasmin Lari. She's also the chairwoman of INTBAU Pakistan. And are you familiar with her work in Pakistan?
Yes, I am familiar. She's
Yes.
done a lot of work.
And I know that they've been doing restoration of a lot of sacred buildings in Pakistan. I don't know if they've done any in Lahore, but I do know that they have a community of traditional builders and knowledge preservation experts that is very active.
Yes, yes, she is really someone that I really look up to, and she's done much work to, she's done a housing scheme that's very much based on the traditional way of living in Karachi, and which is in Pakistan.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
will be doing a summer school and winter school about Islamic architecture here at the New Medina. And we will invite architectural students from all over the world to come, and also anthropologists, obviously, to come and do intensive trainings with experts in the field. So if you're interested in doing a winter school or summer school, we will be launching those next year.
Yeah. And Baqiya, I also wanted to say that if you want to connect with a lot of traditional architects from Pakistan, please give me a DM on Turathi. I have like maybe five right now in my head, all from Pakistan, all in Lahore. So please don't be shy. Do DM me. I'll give you their account and I'll connect you with them. More than happy to.
Sure, sure, yes.
I think there is also like the question also about the principles of traditional urbanism. I think it's a bit tricky because like the idea of urbanism is kind of a modern idea, but we cannot do without urbanism nowadays. And this is, of course, like squarely what Soraya is doing. She's basically bringing the principles of the city, and she's really trying she's applying them, and she's trying to kind of link them up. I do know of one like very interesting researcher in Egypt, but he teaches. I don't think he teaches even, but he has an initiative in Arabic in Egypt. His name is Khalid Azab, Dr. Khalid Azab. He has some videos here and there on YouTube, but he's very knowledgeable, and I don't think his books are translated into other languages. But he has some really interesting books on what he calls Ilm al-Imran, which is the science of society. Also, you can call it sociology, but basically in its traditional form, and that basically takes the shape of urbanism for us nowadays. So we have a question from Daniel Moreno just before we take Muta'allim. So Daniel Moreno is asking a question. I'm unsure if I understand this correctly, and perhaps if Daniel can provide maybe a bit more context, because he's asking Soraya, is there some way to apply these principles into a 2D dimension, namely an Islamic pattern, perhaps in colors and how they interact with people, shape, and color? I'm unsure if I understand the question fully, but do you can Daniel maybe can give us a bit of an explanation, just what he means by that? How do you translate these principles into a 2D dimension, like into a design, an architecture design? I'm not sure if I understand that. I'm not sure if, do you, Soraya, do you understand the question?
Not really, but if we're talking about how to transcribe cosmology into 2D designs, that is the art of mathematics and arabesque, and a lot of experts, even on this call, are experts on this art. This the cosmology within the design is definitely present. I don't know if that's what the question talks about, but if
Yes,
you
it is
see
the question. You confirmed that this is the question. And also in relation to miniature paintings as well, there's another point with regard to that.
miniature and
If you can.
paintings might be different because that's figurative art and it is not transcribing literally the cosmology, but rather the tales and historic facts or tales for the miniatures. But it depends which style again and which era we're talking about. But yes, cosmology can be transcribed into 2D dimension, and that is through weavings, rugs, through wood carvings, through ceilings, everything that is with geometric patterns and that has elements of our cosmology obviously have that.
Yeah, so that Daniel himself is a designer, so he makes his own designs. He has really beautiful designs. He posts some of them on Instagram, but I think this is really. Okay, now we go to Muta'allim. Would you like to pick up the mic and ask your question?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I am a heritage restorer from Morocco, and my question was like, I'm just trying to understand how do you restore your buildings, like, because like this is the first time I talk to people from outside of my country about the heritage preservation, but like I'm just trying to understand your approaches to heritage preservation and restoration, because in Morocco we apply approaches from Europe and Italy and charts that are like charts for conservation. And I was curious about trying to find out a way to preserve Islamic heritage from an Islamic approach and perspective, not like from a European perspective, because it's different and it applies different techniques, and also like there are different outcomes.
Yes, 100%. Thank you so much for this question. And Morocco has done incredible in preserving historic buildings and the craft and the spirit of the intergenerational transmission. So there's a lot there that can be done from a Moroccan perspective. You know, the new Medina, like I said, is a private project, so we're not guided by any entity outside of our own scholarly belief and personal belief. But all the projects that are guided by the government are funded by the French Development Agency, the Swiss Development Agency. They hire local architects, but they are also trained into the contemporary architecture. So there's a lot of tension there. I'm not gonna sugarcoat the reality.
Yeah,
There's a lot of tension there. There's even, you know, I mentioned earlier in the talk that there were 16 buildings that have been restored from the Medina, and I care about the spirit of the building. Like I said, you cannot just restore a building and then put it there or make a cafe of it. If it was like a ziyara place, it just doesn't match. I don't believe in that way of restoring. I respect other people doing it this way. It's not the way I would like to see this manifest. However, they restored the buildings and they completely suggested usage of the building that one wasn't needed in the Medina. The interior design was completely outside of what we would like to see in the Medina. Everything was wrong. Why? Because they just did a consultation of a few people, and the architects are foreigners and they want to impose their style. So, you know, it's your job, it's my job, it's the people of the place job to change how it's done. That's what I believe.
Okay, thank you so much for answering. I have just one other remark. about the INTBAU,
INTBAU, yes, INTBAU.
INTBAU. So I think there is INTBAU in Morocco, but I contacted them and nobody like ever responded to my email. I think they responded to email, but nobody responded in Morocco to my email. So I had that kind of problem.
I have the direct email of the person in Morocco. If you want to send me an email, I'm happy to connect you with. It's a very new chapter. It just this is my email. It just was approved like 3 months ago. And I think the person leading it is just new, and so maybe she's out of capacity, but they are very motivated
Yeah.
they're very motivated, and I'm sure they'll be happy to include new members. So if you want me to connect you directly, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah,
I also wanted to add actually to Muta'allam's comment in regards to continuation of tradition. I'm not too sure if you follow me on Tarathi, but I have many clients that come and tell me, well, I want to do something modern. And I always tell them in their face, look, if you want to be on course with tradition, you can't do this modern, stuff because this modern stuff comes from the Bauhaus movement in Germany. So, let our Rasid, don't give us a headache. How about you stick to what has been working for 5,000 years? The best case scenario is two right now. You either do what my brother here, Utah, is doing right now currently, which is learning the traditional arts, or number two, like Dr. Soraya said, you join an INTBAU. You have so many different INTBAUs you can join. I'm in Bahrain. I have one in Saudi, one in Pakistan, and one in Qatar. I can join any of them. And I plan, inshallah, this December to go to the one in Qatar. You can literally be self-taught in architectural literacy, particularly that's in Morocco, because Morocco has a rich documentation of history, either from the Moroccans themselves, the previous, let's say, Bani Umayyah, Bani Abbas, under the Ottomans, the French, the Spanish, even you guys, local sources in your, district looking libraries. You guys have such an advantage compared to the Middle East, where, like, let's say in the Khalij, where it's very little. Honestly, I feel like you, Mut'allim, can really get ahead if you just put a bit of effort. That's all I have to say. Because I myself am an engineer and I have no background whatsoever, at least two years ago, in this traditional architecture field. But within 2 years, alhamdulillah, with a few help from Bahrainis and non-Bahrainis, I was able to learn quite a lot by just going everywhere with a measuring tape and drawing them out. So yeah, try it out, Mut'allim. And please, if you ever want, reach out to anyone here. We're more than happy to help you.
Can we also ask, so we can
Thank
take,
you so much. I appreciate it.
Muta'allim, Muta'allim, do you have another question so we can, because we have a couple more questions.
Yeah,
and,
thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Of course, yeah. So this is a question from Abdurrahman Al Zain, and he says, thank you, Soraya, for your insightful and inspiring work. I wanted to ask you if you have certain strategies to financially sustain and maintain the work you are doing, and if you have thought of initiating a waqf dedicated for that. Really also important question concerning sustainability and waqf.
Yeah. So sustainability, we are a commercial project. So we have thought of our model as a social enterprise from the beginning. And we have several income streams to sustain the project. However, to grow the project, we want to raise a real estate investment fund and to have that as like the vehicle to grow the project. In terms of the waqf, it's definitely a conversation I have, the process of because the waqf as it was can no longer legally be implemented. We have to think of what are the current legal frameworks that we can apply, and the foundation is the way that we think is the best to do that. But it's definitely something that is embedded in how we think, and we can always increase profit to be more sustainable. It's not easy to motivate and to grow businesses in areas that are not mainstream. However, it's something that we thought of from the beginning, and like I said, we're currently structuring to raise an investment fund to purchase more buildings and to grow the profitability of the ventures.
I think this is always a big challenge, isn't it? Basically, the financial sustainability, because also you're dedicating a lot of time in it, and this is also not personal, but also it's what you are doing. So it has to also make financial sense. And given our capitalist sort of economic conditions, things become very real when it comes to talking about money. It's a very serious question. Okay, so we take a question from Utah, and there is one more question in the chat. And Soraya, do you have time for that? We have another question in the chat, and we have Utah.
Yeah. We close in 5 minutes?
We close, yeah, is that okay with you? 5 minutes?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so let's take Utah Farrell.
Okay. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Dr. Soraya, for the presentation. I really appreciate what you do, and may Allah give you the ease and risk to keep doing this effort. And my question is, I'm an architectural designer, so I'm also interested in the history of the place, the Medina pre-Islam, so before Islam. I want to know how the belief of Islam changes the built environment of the Medina into the Islamic Medina or Islamic urbanism that you just presented. And I want to know how architects or people that play a role in designing the place into a new Islamic urbanism after the pre-Islam, maybe we can implement what they did back then to now. So hopefully you can give me some insights on that.
Yeah. So the Medina, as it was as a city, was built by the Muslims. Before the arrival of the Muslims, we had different villages that had houses that were with similar features, but mostly like climate and regionally adapted. But the Medina is by design, by foundational design, created by the arrival of the Muslims.
Ah, I see.
Yes. There are some sacred sites, and they were built at the same time. They were not prevalent to the Muslims' arrival. In other places of Tunisia, it is different. Okay? So in other places of Tunisia, you have villages that were there, and then it grew as a bigger settlement with the arrival of a new population. The way that the houses were built before are very specific to the place, to the materials available in that place, and to the climate. If you look, for example, in the south of Tunisia, we have underground houses and settlements, troglodyte, and that is pre-Islamic. If you look in the north of Sousse, you have larger settlements, larger villages, Berber villages that are indigenous, and they have features that are similar, but you can see everything that has to do with the ornamentation, with the crafts, with the materials, has evolved when Muslims came. Now, before that, we had a whole other set of architecture, which was Afro-Roman. So, as you may know, Carthage was the dominant power in this region of the world. So if you look at the features of the homes, they have columns, they have mosaics on the floor, they have rooms that are larger than the rooms that were built after with the Muslims. So there's public baths. So there's other features that were present that are complementary to the new features that came after. And you can see even in the Medina of Sousse, outside the Medina, you can see archaeological sites. And if you look at the Museum of Abu Dhabi, everything that is Roman is from Sousse. So we have
Interesting.
different civilizations that came in, but each one kind of buried the other one.
I understand. Okay, thank you so much for the answer, Dr. Soraya.
Okay, one last question, or really a couple of questions, if you can give us like a brief answer to them. It is from Osama Gina, and he's asking, this is a really insightful presentation, Soraya, and thank you so much for that. What was the biggest challenge for the revitalization of the Medina? And there's also another question, how do you ensure that the refurbishment developments does not lead to gentrification? So the first one dealing with the biggest challenge to the revitalization. Second, how do you ensure that the refurb does not lead to gentrification?
The biggest challenge is to stay motivated when everybody else tells you it's a bad idea. To raise money is very hard. A third challenge is to find the skilled workers, because we don't have architects that ask for this type of skills on a regular basis. So the skilled workers are not so easy to find. So that's a big challenge, and hopefully with the INTBAU network we can have like craft schools, like is done in Spain, it's done in Italy and Turkey. Obviously Morocco has a lot to teach us as well, and Marrakesh is a sister city of Sousse, so maybe we can bring the craftsmen from Marrakesh and teach the people here in Sousse. The sorry, the second part of the question was
Gentrification, how do you make sure
the
that the
gentrification.
refurbishment
Okay, so
development?
that is a very real problem in the West, would say, and also in how other places have been restored. I want to emphasize that social mixity, and I spoke about this quite a bit, social mixity is key for the wealth and health of a community. So we do need people from all social classes in a neighborhood for it to be sustained and to be a living community that is thriving. Now, gentrification, like it looks like foreigners coming to buy and to own houses and not to live in them and to transform them just as hotel. It's very difficult in Tunisia. The law doesn't allow easily foreigners. Thank God we have this law. It doesn't allow foreigners to own easily, and that has saved us from major waves of gentrification. When it comes to foreigners with much higher means transforming homes into hospitality businesses. But we do want
Yeah, I
social
think this is a problem.
mixity. We do want social mixity, and that comes with bringing people with means and them loving the place and wanting to live there and contribute.
Yeah, there is the system of takaful, where basically that the society itself is balanced because everybody recognizes the responsibility to give back and participate in society. That's the authentic traditional society. So what would be a last word that you would have for artists, artisans, craftspeople, architects, people who are really interested in the traditional city? What are we missing out if we're not looking towards tradition, to the traditional city and tradition? What would you
Yeah,
say?
I think we're missing out on rootedness, belonging, and balance. I think, being connected to other generations, intergenerational living is very important. That's, it's multidimensional, right? I said social mixity is one dimension that is very important, but intergeneration is another one. We're not like linear people. We are multidimensional people, and we need to be evolving in that way for a healthy community. I think every one of us has a responsibility where they live and where they they are contributing with their time and with their resources to make a living more healthy and more sustainable to everyone. I think if you have a place that you can call home and that is rooted in tradition, you should do your best to preserve it. And I think if you are an artist, an academic, and want to be inspired, you should come and visit the new Medina in Sousse.
That is very inspiring indeed. Beautiful presentation, very inspiring, very encouraging, and
Thank you.
really look forward to more from Soraya. And it's really enjoyed this presentation, the reality of it, the beauty of it, and the reality also that we have so many people from different parts around the world, literally from the the west coast of the US all the way to like Malaysia, all the way to like, the other side of the Singapore, all the way to the other side of the world. So we have very big diversity, and most of our audience are architects, artisans, and artists, academics, people who have a keen interest in looking to traditions. So do visit the new Medina and keep tuned. Stay tuned with us, because also, inshallah, we'll have also other esteemed guests such as Soraya. In the future, inshallah, we have other guests. Should we say quickly, we plan to have, inshallah, Abdurrahman al-Zain as a recommendation from Soraya herself, who will speak to us about, inshallah, meaning in the traditional architecture. And this is coming up, so stay tuned. Inshallah, we'll be advertising about that. With that, we thank everybody, and we thank Soraya. Thank you for coming today, and we can stop the recording now. And yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. I will stop recording now.